was an awesome class. One day last year, I was sitting on the porch down at Sterling's with my daughter Amber and said to her, "I love those damn rocks." And I was referring to the crude stone borders, the large chunks of sandstone that we've used to line our roads and curbs and walkways in Sewanee. Tennessee trash landscaping at its finest or at its worst. The only other places I'm familiar with that uses that kind of stone landscaping on its road edges are the access roads of strip mines. Amber said back to me, "What are you talking about?" And I told her I'd finally made my peace with those sandstone borders. I've been trying to get removed for 2 decades. They're just not going away. And in that moment, in the sun on Sterling's porch, I made my peace. I decided not to fight that battle anymore, and I would see those stones all over campus as a token of a deeper truth about Sewanee and about the world and my relation to it. As I sat with Amber, I recalled Robert Frost's poem, Hyla Brook, a beautiful poem about a tiny and insignificant rivulet of a stream that bordered his New Hampshire farm. After describing the seasons of this tiny stream, which Frost admits is not much of a stream, he confesses at the end of the poem, "We love the things we love for what they are." I return in my mind to this poem and to this line often. We love the things we love for what they are. Not for what they will be when we have hammered them into shape, not for what they will be when we've finished renovating, not for what they will be when the new design study is complete and the funding that we have for a total makeover of our buildings is in hand. No, we love the things we love for what they are. I have made a similar piece with potholes and roads, with Facebook's forever recommending to me dead people to be friends with the perpetually understocked inventories in Walmart and the now hundreds of Michelle books in DuPont, with the Sirius system on my radio that can never get my account right. I have made my peace with the disorder, or what we would call in some other circumstances, the entropy of the world. It is now the cliched punditry of innumerable professors, myself included, deans, college presidents, sorry, Mr. Vice Chancellor, and especially commencement speakers to tell you all some version of, "We expect you to change the world. We sort you out for admission and then educate you to be agents of change, to use your education to solve problems, to make the world better, to be a vanguard of an army of informed warriors against poverty, ignorance, disease, sickness, and against corruption, bureaucracy, and corporate privilege." And some of you will do those things, and perhaps are doing them, and do them well. That is fine, and I'm not trying to make you doubt your best instincts or be unfaithful to your dreams. Increasingly, however, of late, I have been thinking about all this in a different way. Those damn rocks changed my view of what I think we should be about. As I am beginning to see it, our task is not so much to change the world as it is to understand it. To understand some very fundamental aspects of the world that invalidate, not confirm, but invalidate the agendas of change that are so dear to us. First, we need to understand that every physical system of the world and every derivative and overlaid cultural system is tainted at its core by entropy. Closed systems dissipate heat. Component parts fall apart and resolve into randomly arrayed lowest common denominators. Systems always fail, and in the end, every system requires more energy to keep it running or to fix its failures than that system or those fixes are worth. Walmart cannot, at its scale of distribution, overcome the inherent dysfunctionality of inventory maintenance and distribution mechanisms. Walmart stores will always be out of something, even while Walmart has plenty of that something in a warehouse somewhere. With all the power of the United States government, FEMA could not put bottles of water into the hands of thirsty people during Katrina, except by the greatest of efforts. The life expectancy of a paved road is shorter than the legislative bureaucratic cycle that's required to approve, fund, and build new roads. Roads will always be in bad condition. Like the poor, those damn rocks will always be with us. I think I was verging upon this truth about Sewanee many years ago when I wrote a lecture which I entitled Sewanee as a Seussian System, where everything is connected, but nothing works. That's what happens when you're wearing heels, you're going down the sidewalk, and the sidewalk ends. There's a second aspect of the world that I think we need to understand, and this applies to social and cultural systems especially. One of my first students in Sewanee said something to me in answer to my lament about why the human community could not do a better job of managing its affairs. He, that student, Chip Burson, said, "What you're forgetting, Dr. Smith, is that people are no damn good." Chip was voicing the ancient scriptural wisdom of the garden and the fall. We are fallen beings in a fallen world. It is this wisdom that St. Paul expressed when he wrote, "That I would do, that I do not, and that I would not do, that I do." The 1928 Book of Common Prayer puts it this way in the General Confession: "Almighty and most merciful Father, we have erred and strayed from thy ways like lost sheep. We have followed too much the devices and desires of our own hearts. We have offended against thy holy laws, and we have left undone those things which we ought to have done, and we have done those things which we ought not to have done, and there is no health in us." Good as we are, hard as we try, human beings bring to the table a permanent deficiency of ability. It is very hard to get it right when the deck is stacked against you from before the womb. It's not that we become bad because we do bad things. It is rather that even when we're trying to do good and thinking that we're doing good, we do not have the ability to manage our affairs against their inherent disorder. Current students, look at yourselves and your classmates. You all are the best of the best. And yet, still in this body of students, we cannot manage to break our embrace of tobacco, cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol. If by will you cannot rise above these things, how on earth do you think lesser people will ever live up to the idealistic mandates that we have cast over them for saving the planet? In theology, this failure falls under the heading of original sin. Not some ancient set of actions, the cumulative effects of which are persistent. That for sure, but that's not the point. Original sin means that we are missing something. We are like a new toy taken out of the box with a part missing. We come into this world and we live collectively lacking the full ability to take the measure of ourselves or to ameliorate our condition by our own hands. Now, I am, despite what I have just said, and often to the discomfiture of some of my students, I am a great believer in technology. I like to fix things. I like machines. I like inventions, and especially transformative inventions, the effects of which do in fact change the world. The cultural history, where's Cato? The cultural history of the periodic table. The steam engine, the electric motor, the transistor, the computer chip, and the mundane inventions such as double entry bookkeeping and census lists and topographic maps all fascinate me. I believe that we have the power, the capacity to discover and to know, to analyze and to solve problems, to make and to produce those things which we need in the human community. I believe that we can cure cancer, that we have the capacity to feed every person in the world, and that we can eliminate malaria and HIV from Africa and around the world. When it comes to problem solving, I am a true believer in the capacity of the human mind to analyze problems, solve them, and to design technological systems that can make the world a better place. I am a passionate and perpetual advocate of competence, of our ability to do things and do them well. And we must ever, ever, ever strive for competence. Technology in almost all of its forms is good, and many of our problems can and will be solved by technology. But alongside competence, I think we must strive for something else. We must strive for compassion. In the end, when our technologies fail, when entropy overtakes every system as it inevitably will, when our favored solutions turn out, despite our best intentions, to be curses instead of blessings, in the end, when we realize that we cannot fix everything, we can still embrace our common life in acts of kindness and decency, charity, mercy, and mature justice. The prophet Micah wrote, "He hath showed thee, O man, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God." Biblical prophecy is a sustained counterpoint to our optimism as well as to our hubris. The failure of our systems and the realization that we will not be able to solve the biggest problems confronting the planet reminds us that we must rely upon other solutions than those provided by our technologies or our passion to do good. The Buddha reminded the monks long ago that our world, our minds, are on fire. On fire with the fires of birth, of old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, misery, grief, and despair. Right now, for instance, we are passionate to distraction to solve the problem of global climate change, and we're bending every resource of science, technology, industry, and political systems to change the world and alter the course of human history before it's too late. It is already too late. Global temperatures, despite our best efforts, will rise 2 degrees Celsius or more. And our best efforts will be tweaks and tinkers in the face of a permanently insolvable problem. Human population in your lifetimes will pass 8 billion people. And it may approach 10 billion people. In the next 35 years, the population of the United States will rise far above 400 million people. Not one item on the precious agenda of all of us who are environmentalists will survive the onslaught of populations. Scare yourself. Google the map of Mexico City. We've done this exercise in my classes. Google the map of Mexico City and scroll side to side and back and forth and zoom in on that city. Do the same for Calcutta. Do the same for Mumbai. That is the future that is already present. The question for us will not be how to reverse global warming, but to embrace the forms of human community that will allow us to survive and even to flourish in a world where these conditions have become permanent and where people are everywhere. We must ever strive for competence, but we must strive all the more for compassion. I'm giving today, in this moment, my last lecture, looking back at a career at Sewanee that spans 47 years. My life at Sewanee has been sustained by 3 blessings. By my first students and all those since who taught me how to teach. By the old guard of my first faculty colleagues, people like Charles Harrison and Red Lancaster and Steve Puckett, George Ramseur, Harry Yateman, Mac Owen, Bailey Turlington, Ned McCready, Jim Bretman, Arthur Dugan, Gil Gilchrist, and others. Those were the people who protected, nurtured, and mentored me in my path at Sewanee. And finally, I have to say that my life in Sewanee has been made by the people of Sewanee, the people who grounded my life in this place. Teaching at Sewanee teaching all the thousands of students represented in this moment by you has been the great joy of my life. It has been in the biblical sense, grace and blessing. I have been blessed to have been called to do the work of God in this place and among students like you all. I could not have asked for more or for it to have been different. Sewanee has been for me, in the words of that old hymn of Isaac Watts, a sweet field of living green and a river of delight. But in the end, this day is not about Smith. Last year, I conducted an independent study with Elise Harrigan in Cape Hargrove. Our project was to write a cultural history of a water system. In this case, the stream that runs down here past Sterling's and goes into Lost Cove. One of the themes that I emphasized with them, as I've emphasized in this class, is the dynamic nature of stream systems, and especially the feature of streams and rivers that we call meanders. It came to me that meander is an apt metaphor, not only for understanding the folded nature of liberal arts education, but especially for understanding my life and career in this place. Meanders are the dynamic bends of a river by which the river makes itself long enough to carry the amount of water it must hold. Riverbanks are not static, but are shifting, moving, eroding, rebuilding, millennium after millennium. While I was working with Elise and Kate, I happened to discover Harold Fisk's maps of the meanders of the Mississippi River. Fisk made this series of maps in 1944, and they are not only powerful scientific tools, but they are beautiful works of art. It's the Fisk maps, one of those is what's on the cover up there of the lecture. I have one of these in full form, framed at the door office of my house. It is a daily reminder to me of the deep truth about rivers and about life. The river flows on, leaving the meanders aside. T.S. Eliot reminds us in East Coker that in my beginning is my end. And I think I was already anticipating this closure in my career 25 years ago when I wrote, "It has been as natural to my meandering mind as the familiar curves of rivers to feel at home at Sewanee and to think of her traditions as a river in touch with and derived from all that has gone before it, but living, neither dead nor static, and carrying us along toward those good things to come, things that we shall move toward and then through and even beyond as Sewanee completes its tradition by transforming itself into its future." That was from a book introduction that I wrote 25 years ago. And it anticipates all of what I am saying here. Sewanee is a river flowing along and leaving in its curves the meanders of its history. Meanders become oxbow lakes, become swamps and then bogs, and eventually fill in and disappear as active parts of the main river. The river bends again and flows elsewhere, even while the oxbows and the meanders remain as the braided history of sedimentation, or in the case of this analogy, remain as the textured history of old classes and old professors, which have now been overlaid and supplanted by the new life of the flowing river of learning. Smith is a meander. I was a full professor here before half the current faculty were born. Folks, the river is moving on, folding what I have done into the life, memory, and then in time into the forgetfulness of this place. It was never about me. It is and was and will always be only about Sewanee. All of you, but you all in particular, you must know that you are students of the greatest university in this country. Not greatest in wealth or endowment, not greatest in age or size. Those things have never measured what we are about. Our intrinsic nature at Sewanee is our own, and it is not a model of anything else anywhere else. You've got to know that. We are different because of a vision that is greater than, that goes beyond any one of us. My teaching has only been about Sewanee and how good things can be when we live out and up to the best that we are. The world will remain forever broken, fallen. That is the world's own self-nature. Sewanee's task, our task, is to be the agents of vision, of competency, and of compassion in a world that we can tweak but cannot fix. It is a truism of the most banal sort to say that people are more important than things. But banal or not, it remains true. And it remains our task to remind ourselves and the world that this is so. People are more important than things, more important than systems, more important than organizations, more important than rules and regulations. The poet Rilke once wrote, "We set the world in order, it breaks. We set it in order again and break down ourselves." Solutions always become problems for the solver. We must find ways to live beyond the solutions, to live in an uncertain future, relying not upon our ability to systematize and account for all our variables, or to make a rule for every behavior, but to live relying upon our deepest instinct that people are more important than things. When a quibbler tried to trap Jesus by asking him which was the greatest of the biblical commandments, Jesus replied, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. The answer is not to fix the world. The answer embodied in the meaning of your liberal arts education at Sewanee is to embrace a broken world with all of its rocks and potholes and to begin the work every day of building the community of redemption, the love of neighbor, that is the only city that can rise above the ruins of the world. The student poet Gardner Tucker, a century ago, said that Sewanee was a towered city set within a wood, far from the world upon a mountain crest. The point, I think, in Tucker's poem is not the pastoral isolation of a hidden place, but a place of civic sensibility, a city embodying the virtues of learning, peace, and wisdom. The interpretation of this poem in the service of a pastoral and hermetic life, I think, is wholly wrong. Tucker's generation of students did not seal themselves away. They didn't live in the forest forever. They went from here to become servants to the world around them. We live here what we would model for the world, a way of being together that in fact arose from the most broken of places, that arose from the literal ashes and ruins of war. We build upon the brokenness. Fairbanks down there took the burned timbers of Polk's house, and the melted fragments of Polk's own dinner glasses were beneath Fairbanks' floor. And Fairbanks built a new house. Time and again, out of fire and ruin, Sewanee has raised up building after building, never failing in its dream to become a light to the nation, to the world. But only when the fires had gone out did the light of compassion begin to shine. Sewanee students have gone from here to serve presidents, to struggle against yellow fever and malaria, to fight against tyranny and two great wars, to challenge the system of child labor in America, and to serve God and mankind in uncounted ways. Sewanee alums have raised up a never-failing succession of benefactors to this nation in every place that they went. They came to the city on the hill, and then they went forth into the world. When we know the truth that Sewanee is, when we can embrace this vision of Sewanee as a compassionate servant to the nations, the world will rise up with us and say, not only, yea, Sewanee's right, but will say as well, behold, how good. The community of redemption, the city of God, begins here with you. Martin, get us out of here, man.